We join with other UUs in the tradition of striking the gong 3 times, once in memory of those who've gone before, once in honor of those who are here today, and once for the future. We welcome all of you today to our service on humor, hopefully. And I also welcome those of you that are here for the first time. So I'm recognizing some faces that I don't usually see. We hope that you will stay with us after the service for coffee and tea and conversation, so maybe we can get to know each other better. The announcements for today's are in your service announcements. And I'd like to remind you right now, if you have a cell phone, to please make sure it's on mute. And it's with much appreciation that we thank our staff, our greeter John, our media tech Jake, and of course our music person Sean. It's now the time in our service where we have our fish collection. This is a collection for those in our community in need who are hungry, ill, or without shelter. Our congregation service to the larger Roseburg community is to collect your contribution of food or money. This support of the fish pantry is a combined effort of several churches in our community. So if somebody wants to do that. Well, either one. I don't know. I'm taking this out. That one. Yeah, okay. I don't know what that one's for. I think most of you know I'm not the usual service coordinator. And so please bear with me today and go ahead and laugh even if I do something silly, whatever. Thank you for your gifts. We'd like to right now welcome those of you who are our streaming audience and are streaming our service today from home. I'd like to introduce our speakers for today, who are sitting right in the front, and we'll be talking, of course, about humor. So there's Betsy, Glennis, John, and Edith, and myself. So now's the time in our service where we light our chalice. This is a tradition of the Unitarian Universalist churches. And our chalice lighting words today are from Jonathan Winters. Well, the most terrible fear that anybody should have is not war, not disease, not cancer, not heart problems, or food poisoning. It's a man or a woman without a sense of humor. Okay. And then our opening words come from Ray Romano, if you remember his show on TV. Whenever I get down about life going too quickly, what really helps me is a little mantra that I say to myself. Well, at least I'm not a fruit fly. Okay, so now's the time in our service for a hymn. Do I have that right, Sean?
A hymn or
A him or her or they, right?
How about an us?
Us, okay.
And by us, I mean all y'all too, okay?
Y'all want to help us?
Because this here is an audience participation number, okay? Got that? Because as one of our members of our choir congregation reminded us last week, all God's creators got a place in the choir. Okay? So, when we get to the chorus, there's a very, it's not even a chorus really. Yeah, it is a chorus.
What is that light in your eyes for?
It's so that I can project my laser beams at you. So when we get to the chorus, it seemed a little bit loud. No? Okay, maybe it's just familiar. Yeah. And then at the end of the chorus, the last line is, some just clap their hands or paws or anything you got now. Okay, got that? And it's not only hands, you can use your paws or anything you got now. Okay? So be silly. It's a playful song. Whoops. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything you got now. Listen to the bass, it's the one on the bottom where the bullfrog croaks and the hippopotamus moans and groans with a big T. The old cow just goes moo, moo. All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got now. Dogs and the cats, they take up the middle while the honeybee hums and the cricket fiddles, the donkey brays and the pony neighs. The old coyote howls, ow! All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands, paws, or anything you got now. Listen to the top where the little birds sing on the high notes.
With the high notes ringing,
The hoot owl hollers over everything. The jaybird disagrees. Oh, oh! All God's critters got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got now. Singing in the nighttime, singing in the day. The little duck quacks and she's on her way. The possum ain't got much to say. The porcupine talks to himself. Humph! All God's critters got a place in the choir.
some sing low,
Some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything you got now. It's a simple song, a living sung everywhere by the ox and the fox, the grizzly bear, the grumpy alligator and the hog above, the sly raccoon and the turtle dove. Goo, goo. All God's kids got a place in the choir. Some sing low, some sing high, some sing out loud on the telephone wire. Some just clap their hands or paws or anything they got.
hands or paws,
paws, or anything you got now. Hands or 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 paws, or anything you got now.
Hands or paws, anything you got now.
Bum, ba-da-dum, bum, bum, bum. Thank y'all.
Well, that was great. Now's a time in our service where usually we would sing our children downstairs, but unfortunately, we have no one today to go downstairs. So we do have a story for all ages. I don't know if it's appropriate for all ages, but it's appropriate for us today.
Not that bad.
No. Anyway, John Asham today is doing our story for all ages.
Okay. Well, thank you, Connie. And this subject of humor came up with the writers group, and I was at a loss. So I decided to punt. And anyone who spent time in the outdoors usually winds up with a cautionary tale or two. Well, one of the things I did in my youth, and I had to work for it, was I worked on a wildland firefighting crew for the Forest Service as a smoke jumper. About what that might have as in the way of a spiritual message is somewhat arcane, but we do, wildland firefighters get to see biology, insects, life in ways that the rest of us don't. And that is somewhat of a valuable and perhaps sacred thing. It's also the case that if you're in an airplane and flying through rough weather and you happen to see a rainbow, you're in for a real treat, because when you're in the air, the rainbow goes all the way around in a circle with the shadow of the airplane right square in the middle of the rainbow. It's a beautiful thing to see, and I've only seen it a couple times, but I did get to see it. So we work at it. We try to be the best we can. And of course, these cautionary tales do come around. And this is a story that was reported by Murray Taylor in his book, Jumping Fire. And it's about Alaska. And in Alaska, besides the regular hazards of fire conditions being a problem, there's an added element of the bears. And the bears are no dummies, and they've learned that whenever there's a wildfire, that human beings show up to put it out, and when they do, that the human beings bring food with them. And this is a story about what happened at one time. Lynn Flock, an Alaska jumper, once had an interesting encounter. He and his crew had jumped a fire, worked it late into the night, and then returned to the jump spot. They were tired, they had eaten quickly, and left food boxes scattered around. After putting up their hooches, they immediately crashed. Rich Halligan and Lynn shared a cargo chute hooch. I don't know how long they had been sleeping, but suddenly Lynn woke up thinking he'd heard a noise. He was so groggy, though, he couldn't tell if he was awake or dreaming. There came this steady push on the chute near his feet, and he thought it must be one of the jumpers. Suddenly, a set of huge claws punctured through the fabric. The next thing Lynn knew, a black paw had ripped a hole and filled it with a black, hairy head. That got us excited, Lynn told me. I bolted up in my sleeping bag, and Rich bolted up in his. The bear looked at us, we looked at him. He grabbed the end of my sleeping bag and started pulling it out through the hole. I wiggled out about the time the bear had it pulled halfway out. After a very long moment, Lynn and I heard the bear messing around with another hooch. Lynn poked his head out. 10 feet away, the bear was standing on its hind legs beside Brian Fitzsimmons' hooch. Fitz had stretched a cargo strap between two black spruce and tied his tent and rainfly to it. This crazy bear held out its paws and belly flopped on Fitz's hooch. If the cargo strap had broken, the bear's great bulk would have crushed Fitz. But the strap held suspended the bear high-centered, astraddle the whole mess. Fitz woke up annoyed. "All right, you guys, knock it off. This is no time to go fooling around." Lynn yelled back, "Fitz, it's a bear in camp." Fitz started screaming, "Get him off! Get him off me!" The scream stopped abruptly, and there followed a complete silence. The bear then came padding back to Lynn and Rich's hooch. Halligan remembers thinking, whatever else may have been happening in the world at that moment, I knew only the following. A bear had torn up our hooch, gone next door and killed my neighbor, and headed back our way with, I assumed, homicidal intent. As Lynn and Rich grabbed their clothes and tried to dress, Lynn's head was bumping the side of the hooch. The bear came over and gave it a swat. They both screamed. Halligan tore out of the tent and immediately ran into a tree. The other jumpers had gotten up and started running around frantically. One went for the chainsaw, some grabbed fusees. The bear headed back for the mess he'd made of Fitz's hooch and then turned to face a gang of strange, hairless creatures waving fusees. Hot slag from the fusees started dripping on their feet, which made them hop around, stepping on more hot slag, cussing at the top of their lungs. Small fires started from the slag. Next thing they knew, their camp was on fire and they were all running naked in circles. About then, Emmett Graujalva showed up with his .357 Magnum. Emmett, of all people. Emmett, the man with a full-on phobia for bears, a man who talked obsessively about them and feared them more than anyone else on the crew. For Emmett, it was Bear Armageddon, a last showdown between man and bear. Bear high noon. Emmett took aim at the beast, but he was shaking so hard he was afraid he might shoot Fitz. Instead, finally, in terror, he turned and fled and ran smack into a tree and broke his nose. The other jumpers were fighting fire, knocking everything into disarray and continuing to burn their feet. As soon as they had beaten down the flames, they paused and took a good look. Their camp had been reduced to a pile of incinerated wreckage, while the bear had gone his way, ambling easily across the hillside as if the whole thing had been no big deal.
Well, after that, you get a chance to say something. It's time for our circle of life. This is when we express our joys, concerns, or even things we're grateful for. If you have something that you would like to share, would you please line up on the right side of the aisle on the right side? And also, if you do have a cares or concerns, would you tell us your name? But also I want to say, if you just want to light a silent candle, that's fine too. So, I don't know about this. I don't know anything about this.
Just stay away from that.
I don't know if this is on. now's the time in our service where we have our offering. But I wanted to give you, before we have our offering, I wanted to give you the little tip of the day from Reader's Digest. Always borrow money from a pessimist. They won't expect it back. We are supported by your generosity, and this is what fuels this community of ours. Your support keeps the flame of justice, community, and love burning brightly. And what is given now and received is fully appreciated and shared with our values. For the gifts we've received, may we be truly grateful. May we be committed to use these gifts to make a difference in the world and to expand our loved community. And now join us in singing From You I Receive.
From you I receive, to you I give. Together we share, and from this we live.
So now the anthem.
You gotta have the right uniform. All right. This is a lovely poem that I found in an old poetry book that was published 103 years ago by a little-known poet named Burgess Johnson. Now, Burgess, I don't know if he was really a farmer, but he sure understood young farmers. Any of you ever planted some seeds when you were a kid? Mm-hmm. Well, this is our story. Well, it was awful long ago that I put those seeds around, and I guess I ought to know when I stuck 'em in the ground, 'cause I noted down the day in a little diary book. It's gotten lost, it's somewhere, and I don't know where to look. But I'm certain anyhow they've been planted most a week, and it must be time by now for their little sprouts to peak. They've been watered every day with very special care, and once or twice I dug 'em up to see if they was there. I fixed the dirt in humps just the way they said I should, and I crumbled all the lumps just as finely as I could. And I found a little angleworm a-poking up his head. He maybe feeds on seeds and such, and so I squished him dead. Oh! A seed so very small, and dirt looks all the same. How can they know it all the way they ought to aim? And so I'm waiting round in case of any need. A farmer ought to do his best for every single seed. That's it.
With this often. Well, it's time for the writers group to share what they've written for you today. And so we're going to start with Glennis. Surprise.
I'll try not to mix my papers up with yours. Okay, I have a little disclaimer before I get started here. In rereading this, because I wrote this piece about a month ago or more, so in rereading it, I noticed that there are quite a few references to poop, and for that, I apologize. It just couldn't happen. Okay. So there's nothing more satisfying and indeed more healing than a big belly laugh. So when I contemplated humor and what was funny to me, my thoughts went directly to members of my family and my circle of friends, many of whom had senses of humor that ranged from unintentionally funny quips to hilarious events. I offer here a few of the gems from my family. My birth mother, Sylvia, had a running joke about cheap toilet paper. For the last 20 years of her life, she called this item John Wayne toilet paper because it's rough and tough and takes no crap from anyone. Hers was a gentle humor that often depended upon hyperbole. We would all agree that she was a laid-back individual. She was so laid back, she was supine on the floor. My mother and her husband, Budger, lived in Minnesota, where hailstorms sometimes rained golf ball-sized hailstones. Budger, a former painter for the Ford Company in St. Paul, was very particular about the care of their cars. They had particularly nice cars, since Budger bought a new one every 2 years. The joke was that my mother was to run out and throw herself on the hood of the car to prevent hail damage. Incidentally, Budger's real name was Edgar. His nickname was Bud. But he and his friends got liquored up one night, and someone called him Budger, and it stuck to the end of his life. One time, my sister and I took our mom to the doctor. He was a small, nattily dressed individual with a sober demeanor. He asked my mother, "How's your breathing?" She replied, "Well, I'm pretty good at it." He tried to remain serious. "Did you ever smoke?" he asked. "Yes," she replied, and this was truthfully, "but I didn't inhale." We could see the little doctor's body shaking with repressed laughter. My younger son, Luke, also had a unique sense of humor. Most of my friends know the story about the time he was asked right in front of me whether his mother was a good cook. He thought for a while and replied, "My mother's an excellent bass player." Yes, the truth was, I was never a good cook, although nobody starved on my watch. When he was little, he had a down-filled jacket that he called a stuffed jacket. His outlook on life was different from most people's. I know this story that's coming up here is, well, kind of gross. But to illustrate this young man's sense of humor, I must relate it anyway. After a surgical procedure, I was prescribed pain pills. I don't really like them because they bind me up, if you know what I'm talking about. So it was that I was sitting in our only bathroom in a state of irregularity. At the point of no return, I couldn't get up and out. Luke, then 16, knocked repeatedly and urgently on the door. "Come on, Mom, please hurry up. I need to go bad. I can't, I'm stuck." "Okay, Mom, push." "Breathe." That's my son's sense of humor. More recently, he relates stories about his stepchildren, who are in their own right are all pretty funny. For example, the middle child, Hayden, was a huge Batman fan. So when Luke found Batman cereal at the grocery outlet, he bought 3 boxes. The next morning, the children sat down to big bowls of the cereal and excitedly dug in. Luke said he could see their faces fall when they took their first bites. And then Hayden said it all. It tastes like Batman. I could cite many examples of sight humor. I laughed about this one for a full day. My then boyfriend, Roy, had a dog door that opened out to a pen in the yard. When I moved in, he covered up the top with mesh to keep my cat from escaping. He was showing me how he shovels out the dog poop by scraping it up and flinging it over the fence, but he forgot about the mesh he put over the top. With each fling of the shovel, poop rained right back down on him. And the image of him dodging raining poop still makes me laugh. There are many other examples. It's tough to select just a few, but I am convinced that my family is funny.
Okay, Edith?
Oops. Okay, yeah, thank you. Thanks, yeah. Humor. There seems to be some kind of global rumor going around. It is said here in the US and elsewhere, for example, that Germans don't have a sense of humor. Since I grew up in Germany, I can honestly say that is not true. I'm not talking into it. Okay. That is not true. I met lots of people, Germans, that have a good sense of humor. Many Germans, on the other hand, believe that Chinese have no sense of humor. Also not true. One of the funniest people I ever worked with was a lady from Taiwan who was the top accountant in a school district in California. And then when I worked in a large tech company in California, one of the other secretaries one day asked me, "Are you sure you're German?" I answered her, "Why do you ask that?" Excuse me. "Why do you ask that?" Her answer was, "Because you have a great sense of humor." Whereupon I said, "Sharon, your prejudice is showing." After retiring, I traveled the world with my late partner. His motto was, "We must laugh about something funny at least once a day." We visited around 30 countries and found that humor, just like music, is a global connector of people. I recall a few incidents. We were taking a train from Moscow to St. Petersburg. The train departs one of Moscow's 9 beautiful train stations at midnight, and it arrives in St. Petersburg at about 8 o'clock in the morning. We traveled first class, which is a necessity in many countries. We had beautifully appointed compartments with bunk beds, a table, luggage storage. First class also had several spacious bathrooms with toilets and sinks with running hot and cold water. While most signs in Moscow are in Russian and in English, these compartments were only marked in Russian. After I got dressed in the morning, I headed to the bathroom, and not being able to read Russian, and everyone having their curtains drawn, I counted the compartments in my head all the way to the bathroom. When I came back and opened the compartment, I was a little surprised to see both bunk beds made, which was not something my partner was known for. I also noticed that apparently he drank my orange juice, which had been delivered the night before. He was a diabetic and he wasn't supposed to drink that. He was supposed to drink apple juice. So I sat down, prepared to scold him for drinking my juice and for praising him for cleaning up the room. Pretty soon the door opened, and a nicely dressed man stepped in apparently a businessman. He looked at me and let loose a barrage of Russian. I asked him if he spoke German or English, but all I got was a "niet." He kept talking, and since I did not leave, he finally grabbed me by the sleeve of my sweater and dragged me into the hallway. There he pointed at me and the compartment next door. I nodded and went next door. There I saw my companion, unmade beds, bottle of orange juice. I was so embarrassed that I took my bottle of orange juice to make up for having drunk his apple juice. I knocked on the door, and since I did not how to say "I am sorry" in Russian, I said it in English, hoping he would understand. As we stood there and we looked at each other, suddenly both of us started laughing hysterically. We both realized how funny the situation really had been. Another time, in Egypt, we also encountered humor. On a cruise ship on the Nile River, our rooms were made up by young men while we had breakfast in the dining room. When we returned, our steward had made 2 figures out of our night attire on top of the day cover. So there was my nightgown with a mirror as a head, slippers as feet, etc. Next to that were my partner's shorts and his t-shirt. Again, various things from the cabin had been used to make it look like a human figure. However, between the legs of his shorts, there was a little bottle of nose spray which had been on my night table. We burst into laughter and, of course, left a generous tip. I could tell many more stories. The point being, there's humor in every country. People are, of course, struck by different kinds of humor. Some like stand-up comedy or sitcom situations. Others, like myself, find certain situations humorous or appreciate immediate, witty responses. That is why I like shows like MASH, simply because of the witty interactions and the crazy, funny situations. Several days ago, I was talking to my stepbrother on WhatsApp. He's in Germany. While he was talking, I was inspecting the laminate floor of my house, and I realized that I had armies of tiny ants marching around my floor. When I mentioned it to him, he replied, "Well, you can no longer say that you live alone." It made me laugh. In conclusion, I'm convinced that there is humor to be found in every nation on earth. I believe that music and humor are the great equalizers between all of us. So, thank you. Did I miss your stuff?
No, you're okay.
I think I'll maybe I'll go this way. Can we put that down?
Yeah.
Well, there's no way I can top what I've just been listening to. Humor. I might think it funny that sometimes I am unable to sleep at night after the subject we have chosen to write about starts running through my mind as soon as my head hits the pillow. It is often said that humor can be explained by the ludicrous, sometimes painful expressions of the human condition. Perhaps this is an example. Here I sit at my computer at nearly 3 a.m. trying to write down what has kept me awake for more than an hour. There are many kinds of humor. There is the pratfall kind of humor. as when Lucy sets up the football only to pull it out from Charlie Brown at the last minute. The Three Stooges movies were also infamous for this behavior. From the Three Stooges, does anyone remember a movie scene in which no one can be admitted to an event unless they are members of the press? So our Three Stooges solve the problem. They go to a restroom and emerge with ceramic buttons clearly marked, press, press, and pull. With humor, we can gently make fun of the human condition. We often see this in the TV series MASH. I love the elegant put-downs in MASH. I love it when Captain Flag thinks he has trapped someone in disloyalty against our fighting forces, only to show himself up once more as an utter fool. I also enjoy Corporal Klinger once again bucking for a Section 8 discharge, dressing up in high heels and elegant women's fashion, only to discover that no one will take this behavior seriously because he often comes to the rescue of the unit against the arrogant behavior of some visiting VIP. What makes the Smothers Brothers funny is the way Tommy, who plays the fool, always shows his arrogant older brother up in such a loving way. It was the Smothers Brothers who inspired an often repeated line of patter from Saturday Night Live, which had the theme, "Mom loved you best." Do you remember watching Big Brother dress down Little Brother for not understanding something about music? They then go on to produce a beautiful piece with lots of little pizzicato boom-de-dooms, which Tommy has us giggling about. Sometimes, something which always gives me the giggles is a scene in which we hear someone continuously pounding on the door and shouting, "Let me in, it's Dave." And from deep inside the room, we hear someone repeatedly shouting, "Dave's not here." Somehow I always heard two stoners completely miscommunicating, as we humans frequently do. Another inspiration for humor is found in language disparity. One of the characters in Walt Kelly's cartoon Pogo, a story which takes place in the Okefenokee Swamp. The feminine turtle character is called Cherchez la Femme, which must be a play on the French expression means look for the woman. Cherchez la Femme. Humor is one way that we play together or otherwise treasure each other's company. In real life, I treasure a memory of my young son coming in from the garden with an ant crawling up his arm. He proudly exclaims, "Look, Mama, I caught the animal." Another memory I treasure with a little bit of humor is waking up with my children's father, standing straight up from a sound sleep, kind of bouncing on the mattress, shouting, "Never mind, Ray, I'll get it." He had been dreaming of a recent incident at the Colorado River in which our boat had become unmoored and about to drift away. Humor can be a wicked weapon, but is also often the stuff of which human kindness is made.
Well, you can tell now that I have a good time every other week with these people. Well, my little writing about humor, I think, am I using this okay? Can you hear me? Yes. Okay. I can't see, but you can hear me. From a very young age, my brother and I used humor to entertain ourselves. We moved a lot, and we found out that doing silly things or saying silly things was a way to make friends. During my senior year in high school, My classmates were voting on the best looking, most athletic, the brightest, and the person who had the best sense of humor. Guess which honor I received? No, it wasn't best looking. It was a person with the best sense of humor. Can you imagine now me dressed like Popeye going to a high school party? When I was younger, my family watched I Love Lucy, The Honeymooners, Mr. Ed, and Beverly Hillbillies. When I first met my husband Dave's family, we were telling stories about old TV shows. Well, I eagerly started telling I Love Lucy stories, and I got kind of carried away, but I realized no one was laughing. It turns out that Dave's parents thought the Lucy show was silly, and so no one watched it. Well, my family thought sillier the better. In the 60s, there were some funny comedies on TV. Believe me, after watching the news of the Vietnam War, people needed humor. The public was crazy about the new TV shows like Barney Miller, All in the Family, The Odd Couple, and Sanford and Son. But it was in the 70s that, for me, I found Monty Python and Mel Brooks films. I don't know about you. I discovered as a teacher an author called Roald Dahl. And I don't know if you're familiar with Roald Dahl. The program or his book, Matilda and Charlie Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, have been made into movies. And in fact, Matilda is now on Broadway. It's a musical. Well, that was, I got lost here. Anyhow, all of my grandkids were given Roald Dahl books as presents, and they all loved Roald Dahl even before Harry Potter. This year, over the holidays, you too can become a Roald Dahl fan. There's a movie that's going to be playing from Charlie Wonka and the Chocolate Factory theme, but it's called Wonka. The book Matilda, as I said, was made into a Broadway musical. I have a granddaughter that's going to University of Colorado, and she's majoring in musical theater. So I called her last night and told her, put that on your list. In the 80s, I also got hooked on Gary Larson cartoons. And I'm pretty sure the one on our hand, what do you call it? On our order of service. I'm pretty sure that's Gary Larson. I must have at least 5 of his books. He often had animal characters commenting on human behavior. Besides sharing our Gary Larson books, well, anyway, back to Gary Larson. If you were a fan of his, oftentimes he had the cows out in the pasture, and they were making comments about the tourists driving by. And they were always standing on their hind feet, making these comments. And then when the tourists would drive by, they would all get down on their all fours and start munching the grass. Besides sharing our Gary Larson books, my best friend and I loved the cartoons in the New Yorker. Now, she read the stories, and I just looked at the cartoons with her. I think that's the cartoons in the New Yorker, though, is what got me hooked on political cartoons. Dave and I now subscribe to The Week magazine, and when it arrives, the first thing I do is turn to the page that's called Pick of the Week. It's about political cartoons. I can't write about humor without mentioning 2 of the greatest comedians, Jonathan Winters and Robin Williams. If you were lucky, you got to see these 2 greats in season 4 of Mork and Mindy. If you stay up late at night, maybe you were lucky enough to see them on a talk show. I can remember one with David Letterman, and it was, doesn't matter if it was Jonathan Winters or Robin Williams. Once they started, there was no stopping them. So the host would just sit back and let them do the show. I think even more than Seinfeld, my favorite sitcom comedy show on TV was Cheers. Talk about great characters. Carla and her zingers, the innocent Diane, Norm, Woody, Frasier, Sam. All I have to do is hear that theme song and good memories pop into my head. So now it's time for you to join me in our little meditation. So we're going to hopefully close our eyes. And I want you to think of someone that makes you laugh or makes you smile. And then we'll listen to the music.
Making your way in the world today takes everything you've got. Taking a break from all your worries sure would help a lot. Wouldn't you like to get away? Sometimes you wanna go where everybody knows your name, and they're always glad you came. See, our troubles are all the same. You wanna be where everybody knows your name. You wanna go where people know people are all the same. You wanna go where everybody knows your name.
Thank you. So I don't know about the time, if we have time for any responses. Anybody want any response or comments? Want to sing along to Cheers?
Since I've been able to be around Laleen while she's been ill and with some impunity, so I was sitting across from her, maybe it was just yesterday, and both of us were laughing at something she had said and something I had responded. And we stopped and we looked at each other and we said, my God, it's been a long time since we've heard each other laugh. And it made me know, yeah, I think she's getting better. But the laughter seemed so explosive right in the midst of all that long concentration on getting well, helping, looking ahead, taking care, and wearing the mask all the time in the house and all that business. So laughter made us realize she was getting better.
Anyone else? I want to thank our representative child today for just joining us and being such a trooper about the fact that she couldn't go downstairs. So I really appreciate her today. It's time to extinguish our chalice. And it's with these words by Robin Williams. You will have bad times, but they will always wake you up to the stuff you weren't paying attention to. And so, yeah. So, I think we have a hymn, one more? Song? A song? Do we get to sing one more time, Sean? Yay or nay? Okay. And it's in your blue, right? No. Help me out. Our closing words are from Lucille Ball. I'd rather regret the things I've done than regret the things I haven't done. So please join us in singing Go Lift It Up, our closing song.
Lord,
Please join us for coffee and conversation.